Ladies and gentlemen, we just got some brand new bombshell economic data, and as it would turn out, President Trump's economy isn't just chugging along. No, it's absolutely dominating. So, folks, to kick things off here today, take a look at this, then we're going to have a lot to talk about. Let it play.
New data, well, it shows U.S. consumer confidence rebounding in the month of May. This comes after 5 straight months of decline. A White House spokesperson released a statement. It says, despite doomsday prophesizing, President Trump's America First economic agenda continues to pay off. He goes on to say today's consumer confidence report reflects multiple solid inflation and jobs reports that Americans have seen under Trump, as well as a GDP report that showed a whopping 22% spike in gross domestic investment in the first quarter of 2025.
So, ladies and gentlemen, did you catch all of that? Right this very moment, President Trump's U.S. consumer confidence rating is absolutely through the roof, ultimately skyrocketing to levels that we haven't seen in years. And on top of that, domestic investments are skyrocketing as well. So as it would turn out, the progressive left was absolutely wrong about President Trump's economic policies. Who could have predicted that? Well, the answer is all of us. And now we have a lot more to talk about today, folks. But before we do, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it actually does help a ton. But okay, take a look at this.
There is good news today. Consumer confidence hit a record high, and also the highly respected pollster Matt Rasmussen showed that the majority of Americans view our country as heading on the right track under President Trump. This is a stark contrast to what that same polling showed under the previous disastrous administration led by Joe Biden. As for the trade talks, since you mentioned them, I was just going back and forth with our United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, who informed me that the Trump administration continues to be in intensive talks with India, and the president, of course, has applied very public pressure to the European Union so that they, too, can have a miraculous trade deal just like we cut with Britain and our friends in the United Kingdom. So we continue to move forward in cutting good deals that put the American people and the American worker first.
So, folks, that was President Trump's press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, and everything she just said is 100% true. Not only is President Trump's economy absolutely on fire, with consumer confidence sitting at a record high right now, but also for the first time in our nation's polling history, over 50% of Americans are saying that our country is moving in the right direction. Now, normally a number like this would be almost impossible to achieve because it's just so high, but the reality is, not only is this a reflection of President Trump's impeccable leadership, but it's also a reflection of Joe Biden and the Democrats' colossal failure. Right now, over 50% of Americans nationwide are saying, thank God we're moving away from all of that. But you know what? What do you say we hear directly from Rasmussen reports about what this number really means? Take a look.
You guys at Rasmussen are the best at polling MAGA and polling around President Trump. You've got some, quite frankly, pretty amazing numbers out, particularly things I track, like right track, wrong track, what the feeling of the country is. Walk me through the reality of kind of these great numbers for President Trump.
Yeah, the way I look at it is we poll daily presidential approval rating, and maybe that's a report card for the presidency, the administration. But in my opinion, right direction, wrong track is more of a report card for basically the democracy. It's an important number and something that a pollster should be laser focused on, because it means if the number goes up, that Americans are actually getting what they voted for. And surprise, over the last 2 decades of polling for Rasmussen's history, voters have not been getting what they've been voting for. And the number has been horrifyingly low for almost all of Obama's term. Right direction was essentially 30%. Joe Biden was kicking around in the high 20s and high 30s. All of a sudden, Trump 2.0 comes in, and we're setting records right and left. And I saw something yesterday that I never thought I'd see in my polling career, is a 50% right direction print, which means in layman's speak, that a majority of U.S. likely voters, for the very first time in Rasmussen polling history, think the country is headed in the right direction. Only 45% wrong track, net +5. We've had quite a few prints now with a positive net right direction number, and 100% of them have been in Trump 47.
So, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, it's just undeniable. President Trump is doing an absolutely stellar job. Seriously, can any of you think back to when over half the country thought that our nation was moving in the right direction? You can't, and the reason why is because our country has been undeniably moving in the wrong direction for decades now. Also, I do have to say real quick, you know why so many people think the country is moving in the right direction? It's because the country is quite literally moving in the right direction. Sorry, maybe that was a stupid joke. But you know what? Let's get back to talking about Trump's economy. Take a look.
You know, the consumer confidence data this morning were really great. There's no other way to put it. It was the biggest jump since March of 2021, right? So very substantial improvement in consumer confidence. However, I came on your network and other networks pointing out when consumer confidence was down last time that the correlation between it and hard economic data was not as strong as it had been in the past. And I think what we're seeing is that those confidence data overreacted to the financial market activity, and now the financial markets are back, the confidence data are back too. But the bottom line is that Americans know that President Trump is a profoundly pro-business and pro-growth president. His administration is profoundly pro-growth. And just like last time, President Trump created a great economic boom through his policies. And the same thing is in the works this time. And Americans know that, and they're starting to understand that.
So, folks, you hear that? Americans nationwide know that President Trump is profoundly pro-business, and that's why the consumer confidence rating is so high right now. In contrast, I think back to all of the small, locally owned businesses that went under during Joe Biden's draconian COVID lockdowns. It's not even comparable. President Trump is good for this country, and the Democrats are not. And you know what? Everybody knows it. But okay, so how are President Trump's tariffs impacting all of this? Take a look.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think that in the long run Americans are going to bear the burden of these tariffs at all. I think that's completely false. Because we didn't experience any macroeconomic inflation as a result of the 2018-2019 tariffs. There was zero sign of a drag on economic growth, zero sign of macroeconomic inflation. And if you look at the inflation to date, we've been raising tariffs since the first day of this administration, and there's no sign of inflation thus far.
I mean, 2017 was metals, aluminum, it was steel, it was narrower.
China, 2018, 2019, China.
Narrower still. This is 10% across the board.
And let me tell you why.
Okay.
The reason why is because American importers have flexibility over where they buy from. They're currently buying from China. They don't have to buy from China. They could buy from any number of other countries that we strike trade deals with that treat us better.
But Donald Trump just said Friday, I don't want Apple even making anything in other countries. I don't want them making U.S.-bound phones in India. So suddenly India is radioactive. And Vietnam, you can't, well, you moved it to Vietnam, that's not good enough. You've got to move it to the U.S. I mean, do you see what the critics of this are saying?
Look, the president is clear. He wants as much made in the USA as we can possibly do. Can we make everything in the world in the USA? No, we're not going to make everything in the entire universe in the USA. That's not going to happen, right? But we can make more here than we do. But the fact that we have this flexibility gives us the ability to force others to ultimately eat the burden of the tariffs. And that's what happened in 2018, 2019. And that's what's going to happen again now.
And so, folks, not only that, but right now, President Trump is pretty much rebuilding the entire global economy. As you all know, the entire world has been ripping off the American economy for decades, and so now that President Trump is back in office, he's actually rectifying all of these absolutely egregious trade imbalances. But not only that, as we can see with this record-high consumer confidence rating, Americans across the country are totally on board with everything that President Trump is doing. Over half of the nation genuinely believes that President Trump is actually making America great again, and you know why? Because he actually is. The economy is booming, the tariffs are working, domestic manufacturing investments are pouring back into the country, and now we're seeing economic ratings that we haven't seen in decades. And so, ladies and gentlemen, in case there's still any confusion, this is what it looks like when we actually have a president that puts America first. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want to say real quick that we officially have a Morse News Twitter page as well as a Morse News Facebook page. So if you use either of those platforms, please go down below and drop a follow in order to get breaking news updates that relate to everything we talk about here in the YouTube videos. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there, and like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.